I get to introduce Cari Skrdla. The fun thing about Cari is that she and I have I know that we're just connected on a soul level. I just know that. And it's kind of fun how we reconnect. She's done previous summits for us, and she's talked about the power of truth. That was a recent one. And what happens in your mind, body, on so many levels when you don't live in your truth. And so that was a powerful one last time. But so her background, she has been, she's Dr. Cari. She's done academic research, and she's an accomplished neuroscientist. She's the visionary and co-founder also of CEO of Lady Boss Alliance. Passionate about fostering love and liberation. She's dedicated to helping individuals lead inspiring lives. For over 15 years, she's been doing some academic research, working with teams, developing courses to support human evolution and personal growth. Her strategic acumen extends to crafting innovative sales strategies and consulting for major clients like MCI and Siemens. So her husband, Mike, and partner, Angie Bear, who lives up where I live, are successful real estate investors and land developers. So she's developing land up in Cache North Logan, Cache Valley, and in, I think, Soda Springs, Idaho. So she's committed to creating vibrant communities across the U.S. Her journey is a testament to her multifaceted career and unwavering commitment to excellence. What I love is that she's actually going to talk to us about the journey beyond consciousness today. Cari's a powerhouse, and I'm excited to hear what
Thank you for that, my friend. Hi, everyone. And I have to always acknowledge Christine, because seriously, the first time I saw her, I don't even think that we've ever been together in person, have we?
Oh, we have at Leslie Householder's event in 2019.
Exactly. Yeah, that one time. And it was very brief then. But what I've learned to pay attention to in my life is those meetings where the encounter is so profound, you can't deny that there's some sort of soul tie there. And with you, Christine, no doubt that was from day one. And I tried everything, everyone. I wanted to keep her. I'm like, become a rare faith facilitator. Do this, And one day I realized it was like she has her own path to follow, and I'm just trying to keep her, right? So thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited about being here, and I've been listening attentively to all the other presenters and very moved by this event and everyone that is here contributing to it. I also want to acknowledge one of my best girlfriends who I had a profound moment with, Dawn Norton. She was one of your day 2 speakers. And this is someone that we're part of the same soul cluster. We have been from the beginning, and we will be all the way until we're all back together again, right? So shout out to those two very, very important people in my life. I won't go into all of this because Christine read my bio, which honestly, because of what I'm about to share with you, seems very boring to me today. But it was, I'm sure many of you can relate, but it was all part of the evolution. And what I'm most proud of, really and truly, is that being obedient, when I heard to go and study the brain and entered into the academic track for neuroscience, I was being obedient. The instruction that I got was that I was going to learn about how we were manufactured, right? So that I could help people. And I couldn't see it. It's only been in the last 5 years that this has grown far beyond what I thought it would be. And then I'm always so proud of my family. I'm the mother of a blended family. I met my husband 10 years ago, and he is my absolute best friend. I never thought that that would be possible. And I told my mother recently, I'm like, Mom, I don't know if this is healthy or not. I think I'm addicted to my husband. And it's because when I'm with him, how many of you can relate to being with someone and that feeling is that you're actually sitting with yourself? You're that free and that at home with another human being. And so I'm really I'm proud of what we've created in a family. He has 3 children. I have 3 children. And people say to us often that we're like the Brady Bunch, and we love to respond with like, no, it's the Brady Bunch met the Jeffersons, right? And my husband has gone through some real education about our culture. That's all I'll say, right? Or we'll be here all day with the jokes. I want to also share with you guys that I'm having some dental work done. And because I stand for being honest and transparent always, so that I'm not restricting my access to the source. I want you to, Christine mentioned that the last time that she invited me, I talked about lying, and she is going to give you, that's one of my giveaways. I have a couple. She's going to give you that video. And I really encourage you to look at it because of what I'm about to share with you. And this is how I really love introducing myself today. My calling is that people experience love, forgiveness, and acceptance unconditionally and live inspiring lives. And I know myself to be that loving space for people. And I have a capacity for forgiveness. I even forgave O.J. Simpson. That was a huge one. Okay. Like that was big. Dawn, you remember when I was like, I won't make it. I can't forgive that guy, but I actually forgave him. Right. And it was an experience that came up in meditation where I was actually able to see his soul and how he was suffering. And I was no longer okay with him being in that place. And it was Cindy that was just talking about how we're not separate from each other. Like we've got reach. I think it was you, right, Cindy? And so I really reached across the world, the spirit world, the soul realm to touch him once, right? And it had a huge and very profound impact on me, what I felt lift away from me, only because we don't realize often that we're in this soup together. And what we're holding people to, scripture says that if you don't forgive, you won't be forgiven. Well, it's because we're all connected in this tapestry, which is like a big connection to the source. And a lot of times we don't see that. Like separatism cost us a lot. And then my ultimate intent in my business, Lady Boss Alliance, is that people are loved and liberated. And what Lady Boss Alliance is really focusing on is rebalancing or bringing into balance the masculine and the feminine. We're kind of like this right now, and you know the correction that we saw come about in the last 5 years was a bit of an overcorrection. And so at Lady Boss Alliance, we're really focusing on just rebalancing that. So we stand for humanity. So getting into it then, the journey beyond consciousness. For so many of you, this is just going to be a review looking at the 5 levels of consciousness and how I have them listed. You may call them something else, but if you look, it's all the same. When we start out, when we arrive here, many of us arrive here as advanced souls. And I love listening to Vinny and everybody afterwards. But he was pointing to there is the human mind, right, that has intelligence. And then there's the soul that's placed into that human, right, your identity. And a lot of times what it cannot express in the world, out in the world, and what it can't get to is because it's blocked by this level of consciousness, the primal mind. And on that level, you know, you encounter a human being that struggles to build loyalty, to have healthy boundaries, struggles with trust, and struggles with finding love. And if you ever encounter that, or if you recall yourself when you were in that state, you know, you were a bit of a liability. It's a very low level. And a lot of times we kind of want to stay away from people from that. We've been heartbroken by people like that. How many of you have had a friend and you were like, I was so good to that person and all I did was love them, and they betrayed me, they did this and that. It was the level of consciousness that they were on. And they could not receive your love. They couldn't receive your contribution because they just couldn't see it. I've had people hurt me so many times and cause me to retreat into, my hiding places, my safe places, because the world isn't safe. And before this is over, I'm going to show you exactly how you navigate those waters. And then there's level 2, which is the reactive stage of consciousness or reactive level of consciousness. And it's still a level that's centered around things in the material world. It will hop on to objects and chase opportunities and solutions one after another. I can remember that was me in the 90s. I grew up in church. I'm still in church. I always tell people, I don't have anywhere else to go. Why is everybody leaving? Who's going to stay here and pray? Right? And so I can remember waking up and I thought I had done something wrong. And at that time, I was running camera for Marianne Williamson. She had come to Michigan and became the lead pastor to a church called the Church of Today, which is now the Unity Church. And it's 1991, and all I want is a job running camera, right? And so I'm doing that on Sundays, and all of a sudden, everything that she was saying about love, it was resonating. It wasn't like she introduced anything new to me. It was all of a sudden I heard it articulated what I was experiencing on the inside. And if you grow up in a home like mine that is a very structured, very Christian, very religious home, and you're part of a church organization like that, then you will appreciate when I say, when I woke up, it scared the hell out of me. I was like, what did I do? Why am I thinking like this? And it was so scary that I began to push myself deeper into religious practices. I'm like, I'm not praying enough. I'm not spending enough time with God. And I became somewhat fanatical from 1993 up until about 2000. And it probably looked like, oh, she is such a good Christian. No, she was a scared Christian. That's what was going on. It was like, what did I do? Why did I think this? Why am I questioning everything? Right? So it's a very natural occurrence as we begin to ascend. And also on this level, you don't find people who commit to anything because they're unclear about what they want, or they overcommit in the way that I just described, right? And you feel pain and you want to escape it. And really, you want the answers. And this is an ascending time that's so critical, especially if you have children or people that are emerging, because if you're not careful, if they're not careful, they can end up going off the deep end, following, somebody that says they have the answers. This is how people end up in cults. They're looking for the answers. And the answers may not be at their religious institution or their academic institution, and their neighbor doesn't have it. And then some guru comes along making claims, and now, you've got a loved one that's looking for answers, and they end up there because they've heard partial truth. So it's a very important time and a very critical time. And then level 3 is willful, where we begin evolving toward a willful level of consciousness. And here you begin to better understand your pain, and you're motivated to overcome it, not resist it, not do anything other than overcome it. So you literally will yourself to grow. And it's kind of like the area of self-awareness, right? And you start to see your opportunities in taking yourself on. I remember nobody understood why all of a sudden I was participating in programs like Landmark. I made a year-long stop at the Church of Scientology. I'm looking, everyone. I'm looking for the answers, right? And I'm strong enough at that point not to follow anybody off of a cliff with some new vision or religion. I would go and I would take what was essential for my evolution and then move on. I didn't know I was on a level of consciousness at that point, right? But that's what was happening. And if many of you look, you'll see that's exactly kind of how your journey was. And one day it's like what was so great, and you're running around telling everybody, oh, you got to do this class, oh, you got to do, all of a sudden it just seemed really, really primary to you, right? Why? Because you have moved on. So as a academic researcher, one of the things that I've found is this is where a lot of people end up stuck in this evolved world that we live in today. When I woke up in the early 90s, it was scary because I didn't realize I was a pioneer, probably like so many of you, to an awakening. And there wasn't like a lot of people around to help. And I remember Marianne said this. She talked about this awakening that was happening. And she said, you know, it's kind of like a dam breaking. You got a little bit here, a little bit there. And then one day, boom. Well, that boom has taken place. And this is why all of the conversations that we've been participating in the last few days, right, are so plentiful, and why more and more people are embracing this, because that dam broke and it's time to wake up. But in addition to waking up, it's time to ascend beyond level 3. And level 4 is intellectual. At this level, you begin to attract loyalty, sustainability, and scalability. You're sustaining yourself on the level that you are. You're not slipping back as often into those lower levels of consciousness. And you're actually able to impact the world around you. I remember when I met my husband, simultaneously, there was a whole group of new girlfriends that showed up. Dawn Norton is one of them. Leslie Householder is another one. Christine Hall is another. And I felt so fortunate. I was like, God must really love me that he put these people in my life, right? I didn't realize it was because I'm ascending, right? And actually bringing these people to me. So on this level, you not only appreciate your problems, your struggles, but you understand the solutions that you need and you begin to apply them. You start to say things like, nothing happens to me, everything happens for me. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it that I was saying those things, right? But I also noticed something. I started to try and force that on people. People would call me and they're upset, and I'm like, oh, get off it, right? You know, it's gonna be all right. And when we're growing in this way, it can be so natural or so subtle, just like aging. I didn't realize I was aging, because how many of you still feel like the same person that was in high school? Right? I'm 61 years old and I'm like, I feel the same way I did 40 years ago, right? But my son had come home and he said to me, Mom, let me show you this dance we learned in school today. And I was like, okay. And he was like, do it with me. And I was good. Like we were moving and rocking, doing the Carlton or whatever, right? And then all of a sudden, my son dropped on the floor. In my mind, I dropped on the floor, but my legs were like, not today. We're not doing that. We won't get up. My left knee was like, that's pain. You better stop, right? So ascending in these levels are just as subtle. You're just kind of being you, you're studying, you're doing things, you adapt to a practice of meditation, you learn a lot of the things that you've heard presented here today, and without realizing it, you got older. You got older in your consciousness, you matured, you leveled up. So it's a really important thing to be cognitive of the growth, just like you wouldn't mistreat a child, right? Because of what they don't know. We don't want to go out and interact with people and make them feel bad about their levels. And then there's level 5, intuitive. At this level, intuition begins to take over. And this is really where I am in my life right now. And what it took for me to do that was humility. I had to get humble. I had to really look at what I was taught um, as being the sin that so easily besets me. And what that is navigating my life intellectually with what I know. And I called my mother and I was like, Mom, knowing really gets in the way and it hinders my relationship with God, not our close connection. God is my father, my mother, and understands me. But here I am praying and then not realizing that I get up and I walk away and I get the answer myself. And I told my mother that. And my mother said, yeah, I told you you were just like your father. And I was like, Mom, I heard that as a compliment. And she's like, well, it is mostly. She was like, he's a great guy. She said, but you really couldn't tell him anything. And I saw that, and I saw all of the attempts that people around me and that the source had been trying to convey to me, but I was so busy knowing. So I decided to not know anything. And this was 3 years ago. And I just put myself in that space where I'm not going to move unless it's when you tell me to move. I'm not going to know anything unless I'm really sure or really clear that this is you speaking to me, Great Spirit, right? So on this level, it is amazing. It is where we get to go and rest and be in peace. There are so many things happening in my life right now that I never would have done before, decisions I've made, things that I have said no to. And for a long time, I struggled with saying no. And good news is, especially if you're a Libra, a Capricorn, an Aries, or a Cancer, we just completed a 16-year karmic cycle. And believe me, I I need just some soul cleansing from it. I've been purging actually all this week, coming out on the other side of it. And the good news for me is I no longer have to please everyone and feel bad about that, right? I knew it was happening. I'm like, why am I going off of a cliff with people, right? I couldn't stop it. It was like, why is this happening? So coming out of that karmic cycle, I'm able to hear the voice inside of me. What voice is that? My soul, the soul that got put into this body, who I am really. And because that soul is connected to, and Vinny was talking about speaking with this entity that was like a deep gold color. That's an advanced soul. It was an ancestor. That's what he said, right? I'm able to hear those guides speaking to me very, very clearly. I'm able to hear ancestors, right? That will confirm that my intuition and where it's taking me is accurate. And there's a peace that comes with that in my knower. Where's my knower? Right here. Yeah. So what is the journey beyond consciousness? Well, we discovered the evolution of through the study of the superconscious. My mother has introduced me before, and she'll go, what do you do again? I know she has a PhD in something, right? It's hilarious. And I mean, every time. And I say, Mom, I'm a neuroscientist. And so I've studied the inner workings of the brain. But then one day something happened. I had a family member who had her heart valves replaced. And in doing so, the procedure went well, but something about her changed. She kept saying, like, I don't feel like myself. And she kept saying that, I don't feel like myself. I don't feel like myself. And one day I looked in her eyes and it startled me because somebody else was looking back at me. And I went and I started studying about the heart and heart transplant patients. And I came across a whole body of work, right? And began to study the neurons in the heart and what happens when we sync the heart mind the gut mind, to the mind, which has the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious areas. So the superconscious, right, is made up of all brains, all of them seeking up together. Now, why this is so important, but if you look in the lower level, the unconscious area, and you think about a newborn baby born with a soul and a very mature soul. Why? Because that soul has been here from the beginning. And now it's in a human body that has amnesia around that beginning, that pre-mortal existence. And it has inherited from the human nature all of the fears, violent motives, unacceptable sexual desires, irrational wishes, immoral urges, shameful experiences, and selfish needs. And because the institutions that we rely on the most to educate us about our humanness never really go into this. Instead, it's like, here's your list of compliance here on earth. Don't do these things. Don't kill anybody. Don't have sex with anybody. God forbid you even touch yourself and have sex with yourself. Like it's all of these things. And guys, look, I'm laughing. I'm not making life. I'm light. I'm laughing because I'm one of those people that used to tell people that. I had someone approach me once and say, I have trouble with masturbating. And I'm like, why? The power is in your hand. Thought that was hilarious, right? Just stop doing it. And it wasn't until later that I realized that some people are just kind of born with tendencies, and they live in a world that is not having much compassion for them and helping them to understand that area of consciousness. Well, with the superconscious coming together, right? What you have access to when you're aware of it is the non-physical or psychic means that's transmitting from the higher levels, higher frequencies of your heart, and what you can create consciously and override all of that. It's not like those things are ever going to go away, but you do have to acknowledge that they're there. We spend so much time covering them up because of shame. And I remember when the spirit told me years ago, it was 2009, that I was to do nothing but study Genesis 1 through 4 until I was told not to. And I just studied it over and over again for like a year. I just kept going back to it, kept going back to it. And I saw Adam before and I saw Adam after, where his conversation changed. All of a sudden, what came into human existence was fear, shame, and blame. And if you look at us today, look at human beings today, that's what we're dealing with all of the time. Fear, shame, blame. He was like, I hit myself because I was afraid. And I was ashamed because I saw I was naked. I remember, like, I was like, what was going on? Cellulite, like, what were you ashamed of? What were you ashamed of? And then he blamed God and his wife for his problems. When God said to him, who told you you were naked, right? God knew something had switched on this opposition in his brain that was rendering him in death, a type of death. And that death was the death and the quieting, the muting of the superconscious, the heart. Now he's just at level 1 in consciousness. So here we are today. If we really get it, really get it, that there's a new era, and I'm calling it divine consciousness. This is where we're all ascending to. This is the journey beyond consciousness. So divine consciousness refers to a state of awareness that transcends normal human consciousness. I can tell you we're in that state when we're asleep. I can tell you we're in and out of that state when we look at our children or our grandchildren. We really do ascend. And it's often described as a higher or transcendental state where individuals experience a profound connection with universal truths and a sense of unity with the divine essence. There is no way to define or describe that essence. I call that essence God, Father. I heard Vinny say what my mother would say, Yeshua. And that whole sound, if you just say it, Yah, that sound means creation. Shh, shh means peace. That's what Jesus said to the storm when it arose. He didn't say, peace be still. That's a translation from the Greek word. Literally, what he said was, shh, Yahshua is us connecting. It's saying God brings peace and connects us all. And this essence is like this big tapestry that we're all a part of. We're all a part of it. And in divine consciousness, I get to meet Christine there. I get to meet Dawn there. I get to meet Tamara there. I get to go into those places after losing every last one of my siblings in a 4-year span. I get to go into that place and they're there, right? But all of the answers that we're looking for are there. This state is characterized by transcending this, the body, the mind, the ego, and giving up what we know and entering into that space. Now, the essence of divine consciousness is about uncovering the hidden reality of our existence and revealing those profound truths. To who? To ourselves. We have to connect to the source of existence, and we have to do it often. And whatever you call that source, you'd better know it is going to be there. He, she will be there in whatever form you need it to show up. My mom, she died. My mom died. She was gone. And then she was given a choice. She was told she had done well. And then she said, my sister, who passed away in 2019, walked her back and put her to bed. No, she walked her back and put her in her body. And I said, Mom, who did you see? She said, I saw people that I haven't seen since I was a child. And I said, who is it that gave you the choice? And she said, well, it was Jesus. Jesus showed up because that's who she needed to see. My sister showed up because that's who she needed to see. Why? Because we're all a part of that tapestry. And the source will reveal. I've got a cousin who will only see Native Americans, right? That's all part of that essence. So this connection is typically achieved through meditation, self-awareness, and whatever your spiritual practice is. But you also have to have a willingness to be in that space because it will never impede, it will never force. Now, I wouldn't be a neuroscientist if I didn't tell you the neural benefits associated with ascending into divine consciousness. Okay. So engaging in this state, okay, of divine consciousness, you end up with altered brain activity. So studies have shown that using neural imaging techniques like fMRI and EEGs, what they've done is revealed to us or shown us that spiritual experiences can alter brain activity. When I tell people that I was a little girl who stuttered until I was 12 years old and that I have autism, right? They always go, I didn't see that, but you didn't see me when I was a little girl. I was in the presence of the essence because I was so limited physically. It unlocked a part of me, right, that also opened up my capacity for love and forgiveness. Many of you have been bullied in horrific ways, right? and your brain activity and everything adjusted to that. Somehow autism protected me from that, right? And so I remember the first time I saw this type of imaging in reports and images in the document showing what happens in the brain just when people pray or when they meditate. I was like, wow, I think that's what was happening to me. I remember praying and asking God to give me the abilities of the bionic woman because I just wanted to be able to protect myself from bullying. And I would always feel comforted, right? I was praying and it was re-imaging my mind. Deactivation, number 2, of the default mode network happens when we ascend. In other words, you become bigger than what you are. You become superhuman. Very few of us are actively engaging in creation. We're like, man, I should have said this. I should have done that. That's where we live. So this is why it's so important to ascend. Consciousness is going to take you, or divine consciousness, into higher levels of thinking. And then increased gamma waves. Who doesn't want that, right? Some studies show that gamma wave activity, which is associated with higher mental processes and consciousness, can increase during deep meditation or spiritual experiences. I saw an experiment on that where they were monitoring Pentecostals. And what happens when these Pentecostal leaders put their hands on people? They're in gamma. That's what's happening. And then there is the release of neurotransmitters. Engaging in spiritual practices can lead to the release of neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, which are associated with feelings of well-being and happiness. Engaging in these practices can really become almost addictive. And I'm going to say some more about that in a moment. And then number 5, activation of the parietal lobes, which help process sensory information and spatial orientation. And it may show altered activity. This can contribute to the feeling of transcendence, of being outside of your physical body. And man, it feels amazing to be in that space. And then reduction in stress responses, for sure. So being effective on all levels of consciousness is the goal. That's what we want to do. But a lot of us, including myself, still struggle with that, coming down from that place. And factors that lower our consciousness begin to emerge. The stresses of life, the fears about your children or your grandchildren or who's in office, negative environments, limiting beliefs begin to emerge, especially when you're first moving into these new states and you make some mistakes. And these elements can cloud our perception and keep us focused on immediate sensory experiences rather than allowing us to access higher states of awareness. And so we either go back to that state and all of a sudden we don't want anything to do with the outside world, but we have to go. We have to be out there with the outside world because that's who we're called to. One of my favorite examples comes right from Matthew chapter 17. And it's the story of Jesus taking Peter, James, and John with him to what became known as the Mountain of Transfiguration. And there in the story, it says that Jesus appeared, and so did Elijah and Moses. And the 3 disciples with him saw him talking with them. Now, Peter said this. He said to Jesus, "Lord, it's good for us to be here. If thou wilt, let us build 3 tabernacles, one for each of you." Why? He didn't want to leave. When I'm in deep meditation, man, I can be in there for hours because I don't want to leave. But Jesus was like, no, we have to go down. We have to go down there where the people are. And as soon as they came down, they met with lower levels of consciousness. They came down and there's this man, he's like Sir, your disciples have not been able to help me. I've got a son and he's throwing himself in the fire. He's throwing himself in the ocean. They weren't even able to help. And Jesus is like, how long do I have to be hanging out with you guys before you get it? Right? He would get frustrated sometimes, like we do with our children or with people that are on a lower level. And Jesus handled the matter, right? So my point in this is that we have to learn, right, how to navigate the levels, all of the levels, how to be with people, right, on those levels and stay in a higher level of consciousness ourselves. Honestly, I don't know anybody that did it better than Jesus.
That is a perfect segue to, we have a little clip from, or a guest coming to speak about her book, and it's a perfect segue.
Is it?
We get to
I'm
wrap
done.
up. So, and I don't want you to, I want you to have time to make sure to tell people what they get to do with the assessment.
Okay, awesome, because this
Perfect.
is it right here.
Okay.
And I've already emailed this entire slide presentation to Christine so that she can send it out. It's my second gift to you. There's information in there and notes, right? But here's the thing, staying connected to divine consciousness, right, means that you are grounded in your practices. You have to ground in your practices. I'm giving you this, so I'm going to speed on past it, right? Doing the work, right, means that you are doing the work consistently, but obstacles come up. Fear of being invalidated, fear of being alone, fear of being wrong, uncertain. When I woke up, I was so uncertain. Taking your spiritual practice for granted or not being consistent. You can be high today and touching people, healing people, and then tomorrow get up and not engage in the same practice to replenish yourself. And then the next thing you know, you've gone down to lower levels, right? Or you engage with someone that pulls so much from you, you didn't even notice that virtue went out of you. This is why you cannot forsake your practice. And then separation from community, that's a big one. That's why a lot of people stay places that they really have outgrown. Superstition, and then failures. I'm not good at this. And then religion. I don't tell anybody to leave their religion, because if you're there, you can do like Ephesians 1 says. You can pray that the eyes of their understanding become enlightened. If we all leave wherever we are, then who's going to pray for the people that are there? All right. So now my giveaway. When I sent it to Christine, she was like, really? Is this it? It's an assessment. And here's what's so great about the assessment that she's going to give you the link for is this is a an assessment system that's not a personality test. When I first got introduced to it, I didn't like anything about it. I was being an academic snob, for real. I didn't like anything about it. And then one day, I looked at my husband's assessment and saw that he was a validator intellectual. And I read about it. And I was like, well, no wonder he's always asking me so many questions that annoy me, right? Because I'm an executive director. So we're like complete opposites. But now here's why this is so good. You can locate your level of consciousness and when you shift it. My brother died in August, and I'm going to conclude with this. My brother died in August of this year, and that relocated my mother to live with me, and she's 94. The person that flew to North Carolina to see her brother in the hospital, and he died the next day, was a director. That was my primary. I was a director. It was all about lifestyle and purpose, and I was just basking in the clouds of consciousness. But then now that made me the sole heir to my mother's estate, which includes my grandmother's estate. And I had to say, get responsible because there's a legacy will in place. And I'm all of a sudden responsible for overseeing this. And my mother is a great, great, great grandmother. And I got all of this responsibility. So that pushed me into executive to be control, organized. And I didn't realize that I started relying on myself and what I know again. So this is the assessment that you'll take. When you take it, you're going to get an invitation from me to come to just a free workshop for me to give you all the rest of this information that I was sharing with you today, because that's why I'm here, for people to be loved and liberated. Thank you for your time and attention.
Now it all makes sense. Now I'm doing it. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, okay, we're gonna bring in an author whose book came out the same day as mine. Oh, and I have to mention that Cari is also in Being at Zero. She's got a chapter in there, and it's her story of meeting her soulmate, as well as the time she spent with Marianne Williamson and the reason she left Disney. Working with Disney. And so anyway, and that's where I'm like, no, wait, and you're a PhD too? And I'm like, anyway, so it's all there. She's amazing. So then, perfect segue. I love that you brought consciousness to us, that you brought in really like a lot of us, I think, and I'm not gonna say everybody, but a lot of us are Christians and are looking at like, how does all this fit together, this consciousness stuff and Christianity. So my next real quick guest, she's going to tell us just a little bit about her book before we bring in Robin, who's going to talk about biofeedback, which is another healing tool. But I love that we've got the sandwich, which is all the tools and technology, and in the middle we've got the center, and the center is a lot of us, Christ consciousness. And so, all right, Linda Perkes, and I go back probably more than 25 years. And so she's one of those that, okay, I did say like, I'm motivated to get to divine consciousness so I can have unlimited time with Cari. The other one would be Linda Perkes. And so Linda was my massage therapist who introduced me to my chakras. And she also is the author of Jesus is Here, Come Join the Feast. And she's going to tell us just a little bit about this book that I feel privileged, Harley and I, so I've got like a writing team, and it is Harley right now. And so we've been getting books out, and literally 3 books have published in the last few weeks. And so I don't know what that means, but one of them is Linda's.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. You know, ever since I was young, the genre of books that feeds my soul the most is true stories. And 27 years ago, I began collecting true stories from the people around me. And the stories are true answers to prayer, angelic encounters. And then some of the people began telling me that they had a meeting with Jesus, and these people were telling me that they didn't die and go to the other side and see Jesus, but he came to them here on this earth. And that was pretty amazing. At one point, I literally counted that I knew, maybe 12 of these people. And I began asking God, what do you want me to do with this information? He said, you're going to write a book. I said, no, thank you. I don't want to. But I did publish the first book 10 years ago, and it was very well received. In fact, one of the women who purchased my book said that it never leaves her nightstand, that it is such a source of comfort for her. So these stories, again, what makes my book a little more courageous, maybe a lot more courageous than other books of like genre, is that, yes, there are true answers to prayer, there's angelic encounters, but the courageous thing I've done is to write these stories that portray the people who have had an experience with Jesus himself, and he came to them. Now, we have changed names to protect spiritual privacy. Some of the people have transitioned to heaven and are angels now about this.
Okay, you have some really interesting people in your book that you gather stories from that people might recognize their name.
Correct.
Yes. Do you want to name some of them?
Miller J. Ballard and
Janice
others.
Perry.
And well, yeah, Janice Cat Perry, there's some writing from her. Yes. What I like to say about this book is it is superfood. You know, we all superfood for the soul. We all hear about superfoods, kale and quinoa.
Yep.
My book is superfood for the soul.
Beautiful.
Just a
And
quick,
it's so, that is so, I don't know when you came up with that. That needs to be on the back cover.
well,
Because-
that's when I published the book 10 years ago, that's what my son said, is that it
That's
was
so fun.
food for the soul.
It's the way that Linda has organized the interior of this.
I decided to organize this book like a feast. So there's a section that are beverages, a section that is bread, salad bar. There are stories that I call the main course, and there are stories that I call the dessert. So a really fun thing is I have added an additional story that was not in the
Oh, in the first edition.
10 years ago. And it really is a grand finale. So
Oh, cool.
I hope
I can't wait to
everyone
read that.
chooses to partake of my feast.
It's beautiful. So it is available on Amazon. For the physical copies are for sale. We'll be also announcing when we get the new Kindle version up. And I don't know if you've considered doing an audiobook.
Of course, yeah.
Of course. So
Yeah,
that's
in
coming
the
too.
plan. That's
That'll
in
be
the
fun.
plan. Mhm.
Yes. Thank you. So that you
Thank
can check out the book. It's a beautiful Christmas, obviously, gift. And we're also gonna, I think, encourage it at Easter time. And it's a year-long thing, but I think we do have kind of more of a sense of that, that awareness, those stories, I think, are dearer to us at different times of the year. So it's wonderful. Thank you. All right. Okay, so we're going to pause here, and we're going to come right back with Robin.